Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Today is the second of the budget hearings here at the council chambers. I'd like to ask everybody to join us for the pledge. Rob, if you wanted to have some opening remarks.
That's great, thank you. So tonight we get to hear from another group of the management leadership team here in town, and we're going to look at two of the strong program. Well, all the programs here are strong, but two very strong programs here in South Kingstown. There was a public opinion poll of the users of recreation services done last year, and the results of that survey indicate that 93% of the folks who have used a recreation service think that the quality of their services is good to excellent. 93%. That's a number you do not see in government programs of any type very often. So this is a very strong program, and I think you're going to see that the budget that's been put together by the department is lean, but allows the department to maintain the level of services that 93% of the people surveyed says are worth maintaining. With that, I'm going to hand this over to Trish, and she will give us an overview.
Okay, so tonight we're going to be speaking to the Parks and Rec general operating, as well as the special revenue funds, which include Peacedale Office Building, Senior Services, Neighborhood Guild, Community Recreation Center. And following that, we'll be speaking on behalf of the Public Services general operating budget and the enterprise funds, which includes water, wastewater, and solid waste. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the changes in the recreation and special revenue funds, and then Terry will speak on behalf of some details and answer any questions that you might have. Basically, the Parks and Recreation Division, that is in the general operating budget, receives a tax support of $1,172,933. Her proposed expenditure, sorry, I'm new to this, so Parks and Rec budget is for 2019 proposed at $1,843,607, which is an increase of $74,200 over the prior year. One of the main drivers is her wages, 4% increase, which is attributed to reclassification of park maintenance technicians, a reclassification to assistant superintendent, and the addition of one new full-time parks maintenance technician as of January 2019, so a half-year budget. Following that is an increase of benefits of 6.9%. And her services are up 4.3%. Her proposed budgeted revenue for Parks and Recreation alone is $670,000, which is an increase of $211,386. We're going to move on to Peacedale Office Building. There's no tax support for the Peacedale Office Building. It's self-supporting. Her overall budget is up 1.2%. What's driving this increase are the wages. They're up 4.2%, and that is mainly attributed to some reclassification of personnel. So we do have some personnel in the general operating budget that we've moved and recognized into the Peacedale office building because they do spend a portion of their time managing that fund. The benefits are up 11.3%. Overall, in her revenues, there's a slight decrease. It seems to be in self-support of $675 over the prior year. Senior services, they do receive tax support. For 2019, they're receiving $432,749, which is an increase of $12,936 from the prior year. Expenditure budget overall has an increase of 4%. What's driving that is a 1.4% increase in her wages, which is attributed to cost of living increase, which is also offset by a retirement. Benefits are up 8.5%, and that's up a little bit, slightly more because her retirement had a buyback and we had to budget for family medical. And there is a slight increase in services and commodities within senior services. Her revenues are proposed at $893,844, which is an increase of $34,000 over the prior year. And that is recognized in the state subsidy reimbursement and client payments. Next is the Neighborhood Guild Fund. The Neighborhood Guild does not receive any tax support. The expenditures are actually a 1% decrease. We're seeing reductions in services, commodities, and capital, a slight offset in salary and benefit costs. But overall, there's a 1% decrease in the Neighborhood Guild.
And just to be clear, and I want to make sure we know that, that's because of the rec center picking up some of the activities. It's not that the community's losing services, it's shifting.
It's just recognized in community rec, yeah. The revenue is proposed at $773,000, a reduction of $8,000. Terry will get into more detail. As Rob had mentioned, some of the programs are now recognized in the community rec budget. Her trust fund income that she receives from the Hazard Trust is proposed at $400,000, which is an increase of $11,890, and is a slight decrease in program revenue. It's just a shifting. Finally, the Community Rec Center budget receives tax support of $315,000, which is an increase of $6,089 over the prior year. The Community Rec budget is up 0.6%. Wages are up 5.3% over the prior year. That includes COLA and any steps, plus minimum wage increases for part-time employees. Benefits are up 15.1% over the prior year. Again, that's due to recognition of a family plan versus a single plan. We budgeted for a single plan in 2018. Services, oh, that's a decrease. The opposite happened in that fund. Services are up 6.7%, and that's mainly attributed to the utility costs. Budgeted revenues proposed at $459,763, and that's an increase of $2,739 over the prior year. And Terry is going to respond to detail and any questions you might have.
I have a quick question. When we're talking about the Community Recreation Center, and we're talking about the prior year, it wasn't open for the full year, right? So it was...
No, we're working on a 6-month, we're not through a full year cycle.
Okay.
So we're working on history of 6 months of activity
And
and
then
projections for this year.
Okay, but were you doubling the 6 months for last year that it was open, as an example? Are we counting the beginning part of the year in some kind of formula?
We were, last year in 16, 17, we actually were only open a full month. If we budgeted for 6 months,
Right.
but we opened in June.
Right.
So we are projecting, we are basing our budget on the current year operation, which we've done a 6-month, basically, or 7th month. But when this budget was prepared, it was more like 6 months if you include June to November.
Okay. And the new budgets for the year, we're going... Okay, so I guess...
Yes.
Right.
The current year we're in has
Right.
a complete
Right.
12-month budget
Okay.
as well. So we're up just a tick for 18, 19.
All right, thank
Just
you.
don't have good history right now based on actual costs
Okay.
associated. But we do know utilities were up quite a bit.
Okay. Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Town Council, for entertaining my budget proposal this evening, and we will start with the general fund Parks and Recreation budget. If we could start on page 9-6 in the budget document, you will see, and some of this is a bit redundant, Trish has mentioned it, but I'll just review it again. If we look at the overall budget for the general fund Parks and Recreation budget, we are at 1.843,607, which is a 4.19% increase over previous year's budget, with a projected revenue offset of 670,000. Sorry, I'm new to this too. $670,674, reflecting tax support in the amount of $1.172933. The Parks and Recreation General Fund budget is made up of the following cost centers. We have the administration budget, park maintenance, athletics, aquatics, leisure services, and creative activities. Creative activities is actually Stepping Stone School and preschool programming. If we start with the administration budget, 101-40001, on page 9-7, there's relatively little change to this budget overall, with a 1.42% increase, which is attributed primarily to personnel increases. If we move on to the park maintenance budget, I have our park superintendent, Rex Eberly, here with us this evening to speak to some of the changes in this budget. What I will first say is that we have a total increase of 6.13% for the total park maintenance budget. Again, as Trish had mentioned, we do have the addition of a full-time park maintenance technician effective January 2019, as well as some adjustments, personnel adjustments related to park maintenance technicians' pay scale and salary, and we have an adjustment to our park foreman who will be reclassified as a assistant superintendent, similar to the highway department and wastewater divisions. We've also had some utility increases, electricity, water, and as I mentioned, I'm going to let Rex speak to the changes in the overall parks budget related to maintenance.
So, as Terry had mentioned, some of the increases in utilities were basically based on rate increases. And then one of the things that we can also attribute electricity, a little bit of increased electricity use is to the Main Street Comfort Station. We've taken that on in the last little over a year. And also the skateboard park gets a lot more year-round use, so we allow the lights to be on there this time of year, and so we see a little increase in the use up there. Another account that's increased a little bit is rents, and we use that account for rental of Porta-John services throughout the park systems, typically for a 9-month period, but we also use it for special events, Porta-John rentals, say for the parades or other special events that we run. Some minor increases include ag supplies and chemicals and gases. Those accounts are used for our turf management program, and as we continue to work towards a more environmentally friendly and organic program, they tend to be a little bit more expensive. We've been recognized by DEM as having a sustainable turf management program, so the cost of that is a little bit higher to continue to maintain that. And then finally, another small increase was in our signage and materials account, and that is for, we use that primarily for the athletic field paint. We've seen an increase in fields that we paint on a weekly basis, which is a great thing because we're seeing more activity, especially in our flag football program. So, unless you have any questions on other line items.
One of the other things I might add about park maintenance is, while we're bringing on a full-time park maintenance technician, we'll be dropping a seasonal position in place of it, so that we'll have a year-round person who will also add to the snow removal staffing, which is key. And as we look forward, we also are anticipating additional maintenance related to the South County Commons Bike Spur, Noyes Farm, once that's developed. We've got additional maintenance now on the rec center grounds, the disc golf course, what else? The Main Street Comfort Station. So all of these things, and some of the general public areas, like the island in front of Peacedale Office Building, and I think there's one on the corner of Main and High Street. All of the town facilities, town hall, those are maintained by the Parks Division as well. So those are the types of things. Additional athletic field maintenance. We have set the bar. Rex and his crew have set the bar pretty high in terms of maintaining athletic fields within the town. School department does contribute towards that with regard to the football field and hazard field, but those are the types of things that we're looking at, keeping the bar at that level with an additional full-time staffer in the Parks Division.
Terry, I have a question. Are we seeing any changes in this because of the Saugatucket River study and the improvements that we're implementing from the EDC?
At this time, no, because that came after the budget was developed. Okay. Certainly, as that moves forward and a plan is in place for what direction it's going in, it will come into play a bit. Okay. I think we've done some work on clearing on the Main Street side of the river, and I know that there are other items in place to kind of improve that. Great. But that's not included necessarily in this budget.
And I just echo what you said. This bar you guys set is so high. Everybody who comes to any of the events in town, their first remark is how impeccable and well maintained our parks are. It's just, we're so lucky to have you guys. So
thank you. It's nice to hear. If there are no other questions on the Parks Division, we'll move on to page 9.9 for athletics. And I had distributed to you, and I think this council's been through a few budgets, so you're familiar with these spreadsheets that I distributed before the meeting began. And this is the detail on the programs for athletics, which is in the general fund, leisure services, which is also in the general fund, and then the programs through the rec center. That gives some detail on how we basically establish our budgets for these cost centers. There's a lot of detail. There's zero-based budgets. We look at our programs menus, and we actually budget from zero. We estimate the number of participants, and this is all based on historical data, so that we do our best to make it as accurate as possible. And the other thing I would point out, with our programming, if the programs don't occur, the expenditure doesn't occur. So,
Terry, if I could just, what is self-support classes?
Self-support classes are independent contractors. So those are like the community ed camps for the athletic program, where you see $56,000 in revenue. Those are participation fees for dozens of summer camp programs. Flag football, same thing. We use an independent contractor, Rob Young. He's local, but that's what those are. And then they take care of all of the expenses associated with it. I'm sorry, we take care of the expenses through professional services accounts. So we're looking at a 2.83% decrease in the total budget for the athletics program. This cost center includes tennis, softball, outdoor camps, flag football, track, and some other miscellaneous programs. These are all outdoor programs. Some of the programs that fell under this umbrella are now in the rec center budget. Basketball, indoor tennis lessons, drop-in programs, those all transferred over to the rec center budget, which is why we see a reduction in the athletics budget. There's no questions, I'll move on. Okay, so the aquatics budget has some detail. We are showing almost a 10% increase in the total budget. This is the town beach and the town beach programs, which is surf camp and skimboard camp and those summer programs. The reason for the increase is primarily due to seasonal salaries going up, related to not only minimum wage, but we are planning to open a full week before Memorial Day and open the beach full-time in order to be competitive with the state beaches, our neighboring town beaches. We've found that recruitment of staffing becomes difficult because if our program doesn't start until full-time until school gets out in June, most of those available lifeguards or folks who want to work the maintenance or the gate are already scooped up by the state. And we believe we can certainly sustain the program if we open full-time in May. And of course, it's weather dependent. If it's 50 degrees on May 22nd, we won't have staff at the beach. So we're opening a full week early and opening full-time. We've got increased wages to compete with the state and neighboring communities. We've also got some added incentives. If you recall, last year we were forced to close the beach before Memorial Day, a week before, Labor Day, because we had staffing issues. We hire a lot of college students. They go back to school before the end of the summer. So what we are attempting to do this year is to, again, have some incentive for staff to stick around until Labor Day. When we get to the revenue, I will also detail the beach revenue is up by 3.7%. Again, that's due to opening a week early, and also we will be staffing the gate an hour later than we would normally staff it. So instead of the gate being closed at 4 o'clock, it'll be closed at 5 o'clock. So we're anticipating additional revenue there. There's no questions on aquatics. Move on to leisure services. So the leisure services budget basically entails community events, 4th of July, Discovery Camp, which is our main anchor program in the summer. It's the day camp program that operates out of Tuckertown Park. We have holiday events and also the Nature Center activities, which are either camps or programs during the year. Some of the major changes here, there's an 11.2% increase. Our seasonal salaries and benefits, we've had hourly wage adjustments, again, to reflect the minimum wage changes. We've also had some wage shifts in mainly our Discovery Camp program, because we are having returning employees, which we want to have those counselors and staffers that can come back, return. It adds to continuity of the program and familiarity with the children. So those are the main changes for the leisure services program.
Harry, I have a question that goes back to probably Parks and Rec too. A couple of people, not a lot, but a couple of people have mentioned, and we might have discussed this before, getting additional restroom facilities up at Tuckertown, because they're so far away from some of the events there, and especially when it's crowded.
Mm-hmm. So are you meaning there's the one main restroom facility in between the soccer fields and the ball fields, meaning towards the picnic area, or just?
Just people say there's not enough restroom facilities up there.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something that could be looked into, or maybe, I'm sure you probably do, but with the larger events or the soccer classic, if that's there, you probably do bring in Porta-Johns,
I think the Seaside Classic brings in Porta-Johns. But we do have an overlap with Little League and soccer. There's a compressed time frame there in the spring where Tuckertown Park is very busy.
It's crazy.
I can attest to that. My kid plays t-ball, and on Saturdays, oh my goodness.
Yes, so that's something we can look into. I hadn't heard it, but certainly, if there's feedback out there, we can take a look at the activity and the scheduling, and if it makes sense to schedule, rent additional porta-johns for a certain time period. Take a look at that.
Going back to aquatics, there's no increase in beach fees this year or anything. Is that correct?
There's no increase in beach fees. We did go up last year on some of the fees. I don't recall exactly which ones they weren't. It wasn't the full menu of fees, but no, we are not going up on beach fees.
You may see increased activity based on what's going to happen.
It will be interesting. There's certainly going to be a domino effect. We know that East Matunic, when that fills up, that's when we see a spike in folks trying to come to the tiny little South Kingstown Town Beach. But
The only complaint, and I'm sure you're aware, is the fact that there are a lot of people in town that get upset with not being able to utilize the beach sometimes, depending on how crowded it is, when you have out-of-state people using the beach.
And it's very difficult to pinpoint who's out of state. I know we've had the feedback of, well, there's lots of Connecticut and New York and license plates in the parking lot, but some of those people are homeowners who own a second home in Matunic, so that's a difficult balance, and we struggle with that, particularly on weekends. I don't think it's an issue at all during the week, but when it's nice weather, the beach gets crowded. We've had times where we've closed a lot, but it doesn't necessarily decrease the number of folks on the beach because we allow walk-ons to the beach. So it's a challenge. And when there are safety issues, we will address it. Our beach management would have to address it if there are so many people on the beach. I think we had to do that once where the beach was overcrowded and the surf was up. So we pulled everyone out of the water. But it's definitely a challenge.
Not to open a can of worms to dwell on this topic, but I did see a lot of discussion after Narragansett raised the rates for their Narragansett Beach about there being some sort of like regional beach pass for places like Narragansett and South Kingstown where, a lot of the residents go to both beaches. And that would be interesting if ever in the future that became an issue or part of the discussion. I thought that seemed like a good idea when you think about all the services we share with Narragansett. So just food for thought.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, certainly we see shared services with senior services. There'd have to be a good conversation about how that would work, but we're open to looking at all options. Okay, that's the leisure budget. I did have a detailed spreadsheet for leisure services. I didn't really get into it too much, but just the programming is listed on that spreadsheet. You can see where the costs and the revenues are coming from for the programs that we have planned for 18-19. Next, we have the creative activities account, and this is Stepping Stone School, preschool. This program is for 3- and 4-year-olds. It's a half-day program. We also run recreational programs through the Stepping Stone teachers. We are projecting a 12.1% decrease in the total budget. We've had some personnel adjustments with part-time teachers. We have 2 part-time teachers, a 3-year-old teacher and a 4-year-old teacher. In the past, we've had a head teacher / administrator. These 2 teachers, who are wonderful, are sharing the administrative duties as well. So we've saved some money on the staffing. We also have 1 teacher's aide. We're showing a proposed increase on the revenue side in monthly tuition. Along with that will be an extended, not a full day, but an extended day for 4-year-olds to get them prepared for kindergarten. So there'll be an additional hour tacked on to the 4-year-old program so that they're better prepared to move forward to kindergarten. The facility is licensed by DCYF. A full-day pre-K program, I know this question has come up. It's not an option for Stepping Stone because of the facility limitations itself. The building has certain accessibility challenges that wouldn't allow for a full-day program through the Department of Education. And I just spoke briefly on the revenue side of the budget, but if you go back to it's the beginning of our slideshow, we're showing a $670,674 in total revenue through rec programming, aquatics, athletics to offset the budget, which is the goal is to keep it as low as possible, and keep the programs as affordable as possible so everyone can take part.
Terry, are you finding that the rec center is being rented a lot for use?
We are in a good place right now in terms of what we've budgeted for the rec center, and I'll get into that a little bit. In terms of rentals, we do believe we'll hit our rental mark, which is around the $22,000 figure. As we get into that budget, I'll go into a little bit of detail, but we're looking to budget that kind of level for next year because we haven't been through a full 12 months, and we don't want to overcommit. We also need to leave open times available for drop-in for South Kingstown residents where there's no fee attached. So we're trying to strike that balance. And if there's no more questions on the general fund, we can move on to Peacedale Office Building. And if we start on page 12.3. This is a little bit of reiterating what Trish had already noted for the Peacedale Office Building Fund. It is a self-supporting fund. There's no tax support for this. We're proposing a 1.2% increase in the overall operating budget. The program is supported by rental income and program revenue. Currently, we're at 93% occupancy. We have 2 small units that are available at the moment. The reduction in program revenue for the Peacedale Office Building reflects a transfer of some of the programs to the rec center and phase out of some of the fitness activities on the 3rd floor due to the limited accessibility. Again, there's no elevator in the Peacedale Office Building, but we do still have some programs that operate out of that building. So if we look at the funding comparison, we see that we're up about $1,100 over the previous year. It's operationally, we're in a good place in terms of our overall expenditures. We have gone up 4% in the full-time employee category. That was just some adjustments that were made. We have building maintenance staff that is assigned to the Peacedale Office Building, so a portion of their salary and benefits comes from that operating fund. Otherwise, the building is maintained by Parks and Recreation staff. Tenants are, again, long-term tenants. We've had very good luck with our tenants, most of them being in the building for quite some time with lease renewals. You'll see the rental income is up by about 3% on page 12-5. There is an escalator built into the lease agreements for the tenants at Peacedale Office Building. And we have 1 tenant due for renewal excuse me, in 2018. And we anticipate that will be renewed. Most of the leases are on a 3 to 5 year renewal. We do have, we are looking to continue to maintain the building. The fund balance provides us with funding to make improvements, interior, exterior. We did last year replace windows and doors on the end unit where Beekman moved into that end unit. That was the latest improvement at Peacedale Office Building. Okay. Any other questions on PDOB? It's pretty straightforward. Senior Services, I'd like to call Sue DeMasi up. She's our Director of Senior Services. Okay. And if we can start on page 13-9. Okay, so I know you all know this, but just for anybody who might be interested, we have 4 cost centers within the Department of Senior Services: transportation, adult day services, nutrition, and the senior center program. We're proposing a total increase for FY 18-19 of 3.96%. We are supported not only by South Kingstown General Fund, but also Cost Share Communities, Narragansett and North Kingstown. And we are also supported by state and federal grants, third-party revenues, and direct pay through the Adult Day Services Program. And overall, when we're looking at what the contribution is from the general fund, there is a 3.1% increase in the general fund transfer that is proposed for 18-19 for senior services. The fund itself, the budget, we're showing, I gotta look at my, $893,844 for the total operating budget. And we will start with our transportation program, which is actually down 2.3%. This is on page 13-9. Some of the changes include a decrease in the full-time employee line. We have a new driver. We had a retirement last year, and our new driver is at the entry level for the position. We're also showing an increase in our motor vehicle maintenance budget by $1,000. Our vans, we call it the new van, but the new van is now not so new anymore, so we're anticipating more expenditures. We've had quite a bit of investment this year with improvements to the van, so we want to make sure we're able to keep that in operation. We're also showing an increase of motor vehicle materials and supplies for the same reason, and fuels and lubricants. Any questions on transportation? Oh, I don't want to move yet. Next, we have our nutrition program. We serve daily meals at the senior center. It is a federally funded program. Any senior can come into the senior center and have lunch for a suggested donation or no donation at all. We staff it and we serve the meals. We're showing a decrease also in the nutrition program. Again, that's due to some adjustments with staffing levels. We've reassigned, actually, the senior center director's breakout of her salary and benefits more appropriately into other cost centers, senior center and adult day, primarily adult day. She's got a higher percentage now assigned to the adult day program. The other items that I would point out are some of the operational expenses, professional services, oil, electricity, natural gas. Those items are shared expenses with the senior center program. It's like a 30%, 70% split, and we do that so that we can accurately determine what the contribution rate would be for South Kingstown and Narragansett in terms of contributing members to the nutrition program.
Terry, I have a question just overall about the senior center. When we use it as a shelter during bad weather or whatever is going on, do any of the staff from the senior services program stay, or is that from all emergency services?
That's a good question. We've just begun to do that, and coincidentally, twice now in in a matter of a couple of months, we've opened the building. It's worked well that we've not, beyond Sue and myself, have not had to tap into senior services staff. That's something that needs to be kind of fleshed out a little further. We've had public safety really be the ones that have manned that overnight. But going forward, that's going to be kind of an EMA process, and we'll know better.
There is potential, especially with maintenance. There's not a maintenance person on those hours, and between bathrooms and if they were to use the kitchen, I mean, we really have to come up with a manual for the EMS. It's new in its stages, so that it can be more they can be more self-efficient. But there is room for potential need of a maintenance facilities person, at least on call.
Yeah. The latest time that we had the shelter open, did you guys have anybody that utilized it?
No, not this time.
If there are no other questions on the nutrition program, page 13-11 is our adult day services program, and we're proposing a 4.85% increase in the adult day program. Some of the increases are attributed to benefits. I think Trish had referenced that. We've got an increase in the medical insurance benefits. We've got some increases in our operational costs related to professional services. We've found that we are utilizing a third-party nursing services company to fill in for our CNAs if they are sick or out or someone else can't cover. That's an added expense. We're also up on our utilities, oil and electricity. And we've got an increase in books and publications. It's minor, but we're going back to actually subscribing to the newspaper because that's what our clients like, a real tangible piece of paper. So overall, we're looking at a 4.85% increase. When we get into the revenues, I'll go over how that is supported between client payments and state payments. If there's no questions on adult day, we can look at the senior center operation, and we're looking at a 7.21% increase in the senior center program overall. Again, there's an increase in the full-time employees line. This is an adjustment, again, to the director's salary and benefits. We've shifted percentage-wise how it's broken out based on where she's spending the most time. Utilities and operational expenses, some are up, basically oil and electricity, and benefits is also up by almost 13%. The senior center operation, just to kind of remind everyone, that includes all the programs and services that take place at the senior center and the senior center annex, which is the building that's just across from it, which served as the senior center almost 20 years ago now. But that's what the senior center program is. We also get contributions from the town of Narragansett for the senior center program operation. And so the total budget, again, is $893,844 for the operation of the senior services program. I'm just going to go back to the general fund transfers. The town of South Kingstown, we are proposing a $432,729 general fund transfer. That's a 3.1% increase over last year, and that is about 48% of the total budget. So we're under half of what the town tax dollars would go towards this particular program. I pointed out only because most communities are fully funding their senior programs minus some grant monies through tax dollars. So for what is offered in town to Narragansett and South Kingstown residents, it's, in my opinion, a very good value in terms of what's contributed from the general fund.
Terry, is there any talk of Narragansett doing their own senior services at any point?
Narragansett does provide some services. They provide activities and some transportation. We serve on a regional senior advisory committee. Councilman Veely is also part of that committee, as is Susan. And that's more of an information sharing kind of best practices committee. And at this juncture, I'm not aware of any full senior services program where it's under one umbrella. They would have, we're the federal, the congregate meal site for the region. So no, I've not heard that. But we do, we do partner with Narragansett quite a bit, and Narragansett is trying to institute more transportation opportunities for their residents because that is not a shared service. Our transportation is for South Kingstown residents only. So it actually would benefit us if they're able to transport their residents so that they can take part in the meal program or the general services and programs that we offer at the senior center.
Harry, as a point of compliment, and Sue too, who's right here, our seniors love that senior center. It's an amazing, and every time I'm in it, it's so vibrant, and there's always something going on, and the seniors just seem to flock to it. They really, really enjoy it. It's just a great place. It really is.
We've gotten a lot of requests from Narragansett residents for transportation, and they are bringing it to their town manager and whatnot. I've sat on a transportation committee, and that's a big, big request of Narragansett residents. They want to come and they want to eat, but the transportation is the biggest problem. So they are working on that and hopefully putting an additional hours into their transportation budget in order to bring the seniors to the center, because the meals are a big part of it for so many people.
And Sue could probably tell you better than I, but there's certainly a trend of younger seniors. There's almost 3 generations of potential seniors coming for different reasons into the center, whether it's to volunteer or to get a meal or to participate in a program. And we're understanding that there's differences in the populations, and so that we need to be able to offer programs that satisfy a broad age range from the recently retired to the 90-something-year-olds.
The reduction in cost share from Narragansett and North Kingstown, is that related to having fewer folks from those communities come?
So that is, actually, that's my next slide, Abel. We have seen with the adult day services program, you can see, actually, let me look at this, it's a little easier for me to see. A reduction for Narragansett in not only the nutrition program, but the adult day services program. Those are, their contributions are based on actual participation, and they're over a 4-year average. So we take the actual numbers from last year and the 3 previous years, average them out, and so there was a minor, reduction in the nutrition program, and then in the adult day services program, it really depends. Sometimes we have the majority of South Kingstown residents that are clients at the adult day, versus other years it's North Kingstown. So that changes every year, depending on the client profile. And more so now, our client turnover is higher. We don't see clients as staying as long in the adult day setting as we did 7, 8 years ago. So it fluctuates. But those, in terms of looking at this particular slide, you can see that we're proposing that Narragansett appropriate $116,972 to the senior services, the 3 programs.
What is Watson? Oh, okay.
Primarily, they're not staying at the adult day because they're staying home longer because of the whole push to keep people home and safely in their homes. And with the aid of home care and different services like that, we're finding that the people are coming into the adult day at a later stage of memory issues primarily, and or a later age. So when they do kind of age out, it's many to a nursing facility at that point. So it's not that they're unhappy, it's just that they're coming in later and staying shorter.
Quick question. Why is it a 3 to 4 year average in terms of figuring out their contribution?
So the way, the reason for that is because we want to level out any odd anomalies or spikes in uses, and it's really more for adult day because, like I just explained, we never know what the client makeup is going to be. One year we could have 15 South Kingstown residents who are there all year, and they're 5 days a week, and that would be probably 90% of the contribution. This way, because each community has been a partner in the program for almost the entirety of the program, we can level out the contributions so we're not potentially going to Narragansett one year and saying, oh, well, we had primarily Narragansett residents and we need you to double your contribution.
It kind of also helps us in a way if we had a huge number of South Kingstown versus...
That's correct. So it really is beneficial to each community because we do see it fluctuate from year to year.
Sorry, just one question about, in reference to the nutritional program. I know that you guys offer lunch every day. Do you ever find yourself having to turn people away because they're not maybe senior citizens and wouldn't necessarily...
I've never had to turn anybody away, and I've been doing this for 10 years with the food congregate nutrition. But we do have underage people who, if they're on disability, we do have to when they sign a membership, they do have to show us their form of disability paperwork, and then there's no problem. But no, I mean, and if someone is, really hungry and whatnot,
I figure you don't have somebody checking IDs at the
No,
door.
we don't, no.
But I was just curious if...
No, we've never had that problem. We've had people that are right on the cusp, like 59 3/4 and homeless that have eaten.
Right.
Yeah. But it hasn't been a big problem.
Great. And you said people that are on disability too.
Oh, yes, we have quite a few people who are on disability. Yeah.
And does that go for the senior or the day services adult program too? Is there an age threshold for that, or can somebody who's disabled also?
It depends. It depends. I mean, mostly there's really no age qualification. It's more of a physical or mental state of memory and whatnot. That being said, we are set to take people if they're younger and have, paralysis or something like that. It gets a little tricky with some of the behavioral health things because we're not licensed as behavioral health specialists, so we just talked with the Department of Health about that. And because we're not, we wouldn't necessarily be able to give them the proper services and the manpower attention. So depending, that's kind of a case-by-case situation.
Okay. Thank you. Yep.
And I have one more slide, which is This is and this is a difficult slide to read, I'm sorry, but basically it's on page 13-13, and what this is the overall revenue statement. And I've been through most of where our revenues are coming from, but overall, you can see transportation is fully funded by the general fund with a $700 miscellaneous revenue, which is really, we charge 50 cents a ride for those who can afford it. So we budget $700 for that. In terms of the nutrition program, you see the breakout between Narragansett, South Kingstown General Fund, and miscellaneous grants. We do get a grant from the state. And then we have our daycare program, which really has the most revenue sources in terms of the cost share communities as well as client payments. And we also have state subsidy payments through Medicaid and neighborhood health for the daycare services. We also have some miscellaneous revenue, which is donations that might come in from caregivers or folks who are familiar with the program. You will notice where we are not showing a miscellaneous grant for 18-19 for the daycare. That's the Title IIIB grant, which has been reduced and is being allocated primarily to the senior center programming. And then the senior center program shows Narragansett's cost share. We do run some classes where there are fees associated with them, so we do anticipate $10,000 through program fees. You'll see our miscellaneous grants is reduced again by 22%. That's due to the reduction in the Title IIIB grant, but we also get state grant monies and some legislative grants as well. And then we have a $15,000 allocation through the Oliver Watson Fund, which is really to offset that loss that we see from the Title IIIB. And we're hoping that we can level that out in the years going forward or find alternate funding sources. And that's the revenue for the senior services program. I do, in the narrative, you will see, and you've probably read it already, how the breakout of the revenue is determined for the different communities. We've got statistics and numbers in there related to how many meals we serve, how many meals get served to Narragansett residents versus South Kingstown residents. Same thing with the adult day, percentages of number of days, service days provided to residents from Narragansett, North Kingstown, and South Kingstown. But if there are any questions, Sue and I certainly are.
Terry, if I may, could you just talk briefly about the Oliver Wendell property, where we are in the disposition?
So the Oliver Watson property is on Waits Corner Road. It has been sitting for some time. It was deeded to the town for the purpose of the senior services program. At one time, it was a nursing facility for the elderly. And at this point, as I understand it, there's some discussion, or has been discussion, between the town council and the planning board in terms of how that property might be zoned in order to get the highest value for it, because whatever the town gets for that property will be part of the senior services fund, which will be wonderful, so that we can have a fund balance where if we need to make improvements and do capital projects, we will have a nest egg. But at this point, I don't have a lot of information. I just know that property is in a place where from where I sit, which is looking at the best interest of the senior program and the senior population, it would be nice to kind of move that forward and see if we can sell it. I forget the street number, but it's right across from the church that's right on Waits Corner Road around the corner.
Has it been appraised? Do we know how much the...
It was appraised 3 or 4 years ago, and at that time, the market was not in a place where the town was ready to put it on the market, just because of the conditions.
I was just curious the value of the property, what you're expecting to get from it.
Ballpark, I don't, 300,000 maybe? I don't know. The structure itself is very dilapidated. Again, I'm not a building official. I'm not, just know that it's in really bad shape.
But it's a challenge in multiple dimensions. I mean, it really is an underperforming property for the community at this point. It's an asset that's locked up and not available to the senior program. It is one of these things that, it's a leverage point where we can make a difference.
How much acreage is associated with that property? How many acres?
Don't have that.
They were talking about maybe subdividing some of that.
I think it's, I want to say, 1.5 acres. And there was talk about some possibility of subdivision. Again, you know, that was planning board and town council discussions. And I believe the town council are also serve as the fiscal agents for that purpose. So you kind of have, there's dual responsibility, I guess.
I just have one quick question. When we used to get our packets, we used to get the senior newsletter bulletin that was distributed.
You don't get that?
Okay.
I used to love opening up just to see what was going on at the senior center. If not, if it's available.
Next week, Meg, you will have a
I was gonna
newsletter.
say, if it's online, I can look at.
downstairs in the foyer.
Okay.
But I
But,
didn't
yeah,
know that.
we used to get 'em, and it would just be so interesting to see the programs that were going on and what the seniors were doing, and it was just kind of a pulse point for our senior
Or
community.
just an email would be great of the,
Oh, it's like
We heard the
It's
council's
always
going
on the,
green.
we also posted on the town website.
Okay.
But I will get it's in color.
We're moving up. And that is the senior services budget, unless there's any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the Neighborhood Guild. And just some general information, again, I think Tricia already hit on these. The Guild is a self-sufficient fund. It's supported through trust income and program revenue. The FY 18-19 budget reflects a 1% decrease. We have some reasons for that, which I'll go over, but one of them is we're looking to reduce the operating hours because of the overlap and redundancy with having the rec center open. We've also transitioned some of the athletic programming and private party rental revenue to the recreation center as well. So we can start on page 14. Let's see, we'll go right to the... There's 7 cost centers within the Guild. We have the administration and maintenance division, and then we have the Guild front desk operations, and the remainder are all program cost centers. We have a trip program, youth program, music, adults, and arts. So just briefly, you'll see the funding comparison compared to last year, and we are looking at a decrease of $8,112 overall. And if we start, again, on page 14-7, we're looking at the administration and maintenance budget, and this basically covers staffing and building maintenance. And you'll see we have an increase in the full-time staffing on the Guild admin. We've had some adjustments to certain staff who, again, the Parks and Recreation full-time staff, many of them are broken out among different funds. For instance, myself, I fall under the Guild, I fall under the Senior Services Fund and Parks and Recreation. So every year we look at how staff is really using their time, where they're committing most of their work to, and we try to adjust that so that it's applied to the correct cost center. So there's an 8% increase there, and primarily that's for an adjustment to the building maintenance technician who works primarily at the Guild, has some of his salary and benefits applied to Stepping Stone, but for the last few years, there was also a percentage applied to the Parks division, because at one point that role was for the building maintenance person to close up the park restrooms at night in the summer and those types of things. So that's been adjusted. We've had some increases in utilities. Most of the budget is either reduced or level funded in terms of the operational expenses, with the exception of, again, utilities. So we're looking at a total admin and building maintenance budget increase of about 5%, and the budget is $480,352. If we move on to the program expenditures, we are looking at first the front desk operation, and the front desk operation kind of has many responsibilities, because it's the first line of defense, so to speak, that customers see when they come into the Guild. So they provide customer service, phones, registrations. The other thing that the front desk is responsible for is collecting drop-in fees for, let's say, toddler time at the Guild, those types of things. So, and administrative support in general. So we're showing for the front desk operation a decrease of 19%. And again, that is due to the fact that we are looking at reducing the hours of operation for the Guild. Monday through Friday, right now, we're open until 9 p.m. We are proposing that we close at 8:30 p.m. by a half hour, which doesn't seem like much, but it's 2.5 hours a week. And then on Fridays, it's 2 hours a week. On Fridays, we are proposing that we close at 5 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. because we've seen a decrease in the activity on the Friday evenings. So we're looking at the decrease overall basically is salary and benefits with part-time staff on the front desk. We also have our seniors program, which is really a trip program, and it's not just for seniors, so that's a little confusing. But we're showing a 3% reduction. That's not unusual. We usually base our budget on the previous year, so depending on what trips and how active they've been over the course of the year, we set that budget in those terms. So we're looking at a 3% decrease in the trip program. If we look at our youth program, this is showing a significant decrease, again, because we have moved some programs from the Guild youth programs to the rec center. One of the most popular programs that probably everybody has heard of is Champs Camp, which is a summer program that has traditionally been held at the Guild for at least 6 weeks over the course of the summer. It is now at the rec center. That's one of the main programs that's been shifted. So that shows the reduction in that cost center. If we look at the music program, that is one area where we are showing a reduction, but that's not related to anything but a correction in our part-time salary line. So the program overall is pretty level, and we actually have a proposed increase on the music revenue, I believe. That's a very active program at the Guild. The Knapp School is kind of unique. We don't see a lot of rec departments that have a music program, but we have a great coordinator. It's very well run. We have some very talented instructors, so that's thriving. Our adults program is showing a 9% decrease. Again, basically that's based on our current year projection. Our adult programming fluctuates based on our availability of independent contractors to offer a variety of programs, reading nautical maps or babysitting or chair caning or those types of things. So we've just made that adjustment for 18-19. And again, these programs, if they don't run, the expenditures aren't made either. And then our arts program is showing a 4.7% reduction. Again, it's just an adjustment based on where we're at now. We have the Access to Art program has run for many years, and it fluctuates based on our availability of independent contractors and instructors. And then overall, you'll see the revenues for the Guild program are on page 14-11. We've had a reduction in all of our program revenue with the exception of the music program, as I mentioned. Again, that's partially due to transfer to the rec center, partially due to just adjusting overall to some of the availability of what we have to offer in terms of instructors for adult and arts programs. We rely obviously on the trust income and the August Hazard Trust Fund, and then a little bit from designated fund balance, which is pretty standard or has been over the years. So that's what we're proposing for our revenue generation, and it's down by about 1%. Are there any questions? Okay, last one. Community Recreation Center. And just overview, we're proposing pretty much a level fund overall for the operation, just based on the fact that we haven't been through a full 12-month cycle. We're being conservative. We're showing a 0.6% proposed increase with almost a 2% increase in the general fund transfer. Still in the first full year of operation. We're projecting program revenue based on the 6 months of activity that we've had in the current year and what we're projecting. The facility rental revenue, we are anticipating to remain level, and that's primarily because we're very tuned into making sure that we have open gym time where kids can come over after school from Broad Rock. If they're a resident, they don't have to pay. They can come in and use the facility, and that goes for any age. And we have a schedule that we put out weekly so that people can know when they can come in and not have to pay for the program.
Terry, I like how when we do have these widespread power outages, we always advertise on the town, either website or through the social media, that the rec center is open for people to use, for a shower or whatever they need. That's, I think, a very wise use of that space.
It makes sense to do that. We have a beautiful, locker room facilities that if the town's people need it, we ought to be able to offer that. So overall, if we look at, let's see, the expenditure statement on page 15-5, we'll see some increase in the salaries and benefits, nothing unusual there. We are showing an increase in our utilities. I'd point out electricity. We were way off on our electricity budget for the current year, but fortunately we've been able to make adjustments because we've had savings in other areas, so that there's not the anticipation that we'll be over budget. And we've made that adjustment for the 18-19 year. We've got some increases in professional services, decrease in professional services. That's related to the fact that we require less in terms of staffing or outside staffing because we have staff within the rec center that they're able to administer some programs on their own. We do not have to hire outside independent contractors for that.
Terry, has the Rec Commission looked into state renewable energy programs to maybe take care of that electrical bill?
Has the Rec Commission what?
Looked into the possibility of taking advantage of states' renewable energy programs?
No, they haven't. I don't think that's come up. I know with the design of the facility, there was certainly attention paid to what types of lighting was put in the building. I think just the formula overall for what was projected was off. We certainly have we're open, I think, 85 hours a week, 10 p.m. every night. Well, actually later because we have staff on until midnight cleaning. So, but we can certainly look into that to see if anything's available. But overall, the program itself, we are being relatively conservative in how we move forward into 18-19. I'm hopeful that our rental income exceeds what we're proposing. Same thing on the athletic program revenues. We certainly have a great interest in terms of groups wanting to rent the building, athletic groups. Again, we're proceeding cautiously so that we're not overcommitting and then taking time away from residents. So overall, we're showing rental income, as I said, at 22.2. We should hit that mark this year. Athletic program revenues, the projection at 98,000 for this current year is probably a little bit low. I checked that yesterday, and we're just about at that mark. So I do anticipate that will easily exceed the $100,000 mark for this year. And based on some of the programs we have planned for 18-19, the $112,400 proposed budget is certainly reasonable. And then so the general fund transfer that's proposed is $315,000. And we have proposing a designated fund balance transfer of $10,000. And that is the total budget for the rec center, $459,763. I did give you some detail on the programs that have been established at the rec center. You can see what programs have shifted over. The community ed camps, those are all the sports camps. Indoor tennis, which has become very popular. The youth basketball program, which is our largest program. And then we've got summer basketball and the drop-in programs. Any questions?
I have a question, actually, I think for Rob. One of the common themes that we're seeing here, and I think we're going to see in most of the presentations, are utility costs. And to Abel's point, we have the solar field that's being completed. I wonder if we could have an update on when that might be completed and what impact it might have.
We've got John coming up after
great.
this presentation, and it's on one of the slides he hasn't seen yet. So
Great. Thank you.
That's great. Terry, speaking of construction stuff, though, where are we on the construction contract closeout? Have we closed out yet?
We haven't closed out yet. We have one last pay application that has not been submitted. We're still, we're working with Aalborg to address some final, punch list items, things that, and they did let us know that there's a good 12-month cycle with various things on a building of that size that might come up. And we've had a few items that we're currently dealing with, but we have just the final pay application, which I'm not sure when that's coming, but we're just addressing a few more.
Rhode Island on public building construction, are there generally mechanic lien releases that come to us, and we are in possession of all that we need?
As far as I know, we are. Those those lien releases came with all of the contract documents.
So our exposure is really at this point just making sure that the systems are operating
Correct.
as they were
Correct.
spec'd.
Right. And any corrections that need to be made or, minor things that are coming up.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the public services general operating as well as the enterprise funds, water, wastewater, and solid waste. So the tax support appropriation to fund the public services operating budget is $3,150,661. The expenditure budget is up 5.2%. One of the major drivers for that increase is in January of 2018, we had budgeted for an equipment operator 1 position. So for fiscal year 2019, that's going to be a full year's of budget. So the benefit is reflective of that new full-time position for 12 months. The proposed revenue budget for Public Works is $18,625. It's an increase of $1,225 over the previous year. And basically that is permits, licenses, inspection fees, and soil erosion. A brief overview of the water fund. This is an enterprise fund which is self-supporting on user fees. Proposed water fund budget is increasing by 8.5%. One of the increases, a major increase, is 9.5% in wages over the prior year, which is attributed mainly to anticipated retirement leave payout. Benefits are up 3.6%, and services is up 24.9% over the prior year. Proposed revenue budget is $1,143,835, a decrease of $35,174 over the prior year, and we're going to see this in metered sales. Brief overview of the wastewater fund. Again, it's an enterprise fund which is self-supporting. There are no tax dollars associated with these funds. But proposed budgeted expenditures is increased to 11.3%. The driver of this are wages. They're up 9.4%. It's actually a decrease over the prior year. That's reflective of a retirement and the reduction of the payout associated with those retirees. Benefits are up 15.8%, and that's in the medical coverage for replacement of the retirees. Again, we go back to single plans, and capital outlay is up 56.1%, which is consistent with the pay-go portion of the CIP for 2019. Revenues are proposed to increase by $464,000 for a total of $4,588,124. This is associated with that pay-go portion of the capital. You'll see the increases in the user fees and our regional partner contributions. And finally, overview in the solid waste fund, another enterprise fund, no tax support, self-supporting. Their budget's up 8.6%. Wages associated with that is up 3.4%. That's based on cost of living increases, and again, recognition of anticipated retirement. So budgeting for some payout for accrued leave time. Benefits are up 5.9%, services are up 9.9%, associated with tipping fees, and the proposed revenue budget is $819,722, an increase of $64,580 over the prior year. John?
On page 8.1, I can walk you through the general fund in a little more detail. So the first element is the engineering division, which, way of background, oversees our infrastructure in town. They also do right-of-way permitting and soil erosion permitting. And as Trish indicated, there's no staffing changes in engineering for the upcoming year. Increases are primarily associated with personnel costs. I can tell you, I don't know if the council wants a brief update on where we are with the storm. So National Grid had, as of Saturday evening, a high of about 3,000 customers out. As of this morning, they went through 126. So they are keeping their strike forces on hand and not letting any of those third-party vendors or contractors go. And they're keeping their regional staging areas in place. Grid is pretty well doing what they need to do at this point. It was a very difficult storm. We had a lot of poles down with this storm that we didn't see in prior. So, I know some people were out of power for quite some time.
John, is it just me, or does it seem like with these storms we're seeing more and more significant power outages with trees down? And is there anything that we can do as a town to sort of maintain our trees any differently to prevent this?
Trees are clearly the culprit.
Right.
And whether they're publicly owned or privately owned, I think a lot of the trees we saw in this storm are actually private. So, I mean, the solution is, and I'm not suggesting it, you clear cut 80 feet on either side of poles. It's going to change the character of the community.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to be able, I think, to prevent these type of outages. And they're going to happen again.
Yeah, I don't ever remember, maybe I just don't remember when I was younger, as a child, it happening as frequently as it did. But, I mean, to lose power for days and days, it just bewildered. I don't remember this happening decades ago.
I think this storm, and I talked to Grid about it a number of times, the intensity of the wind and the duration was an anomaly. We typically don't see that long a duration.
It's typical when this happens, too. The town, correct me if I'm wrong, don't we offer our resources to Grid and say, like, we've got people?
We worked all weekend with them. We can't touch wires. We can't touch trees that are within wires. Grid has to do that. But we work with them to clear out any our payloaders and backhoes, any big trunks that they can't move. So we team up with them at the beginning of the storm, and we work with them throughout. And we give Grid the restoration priority, which they follow pretty close.
And I'm not discounting. You guys have done a great job. It just seems like every...
It's frustrating. Everybody gets frustrated.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be without power for 4 days. And the other thing is, I saw Joe down in Matunuck on Sunday. We had quite a bit of erosion just west of the wall. The erosion's now, the beachhead pretty much disappeared by the fence line. That chain link fence across from Mary Coppins is probably 50 feet of it in the air. So we're waiting on, we did barricade off the area yesterday, and we're waiting to see if we have any more erosion tomorrow, and then we're going to go down and we've already had CRMC down there to try to, they gave us permission to try to import some sand where that scour hole is.
How did the wall hold up for you?
Fared fine.
Okay. Did exactly what you thought it would?
Well, it did.
That's great.
Fortunately, the Maginot line only goes so far.
So all the more importance that we've got to keep, and we met with Grid last week about, as a side to that project, continuation of the wall. So we've got 4 poles on the south side. We've got to move to the north side. It requires easements from Blackbeards and Mary Carpenters. So we met with the principals of both of those properties last week with Grid. They've conceptually given verbal approval for moving those poles because they need push poles to counteract the load of the wires. So Grid's in the process of forming them easements at this point. Once the easements are in place, we'll be back to the council for a full petition to move those poles. I don't have anything else. I mean, engineering's probably, of all the divisions, it's the one with the least amount of, any kind of change for next year. So unless there's no question, engineering. So trees, again, seems like we're spending more time focused on removals. We've already gone through the tree warden's emergency removal budget for this year and the third-party arbors. If you recall, the council awarded a contract, I believe, in February for that work. So one of the things I think we're going to need to look at, and we did a number of years ago, we had money budgeted for an arborist truck to try to get more work done in-house. I think at some point we're going to have to revisit that. Just for liability reasons, we've got a couple claims with the trust right now that are in litigation. And I think we've got to, even though we spent a lot of time and effort to try to get these poor trees out, we need to do more. The other thing I wanted to say, too, is National Grid is a big partner in this. We give them, anytime Bill Wallace identifies trees that needs to come up, we go to Grid first. If the trees are a threat to the utilities, they will take the trees out for us. So they've saved us significant funds over the last 5 or 10 years. They've really been a good partner in trying to remove these threats, these trees that are a threat.
Do we ever proactively go out and, just sort of take an audit, looking around and, in certain sections of the community and saying, are there any trees that are potential?
I mean, the highway division, especially the assistant highway superintendent, he's on the road every day. So he's kind of the person who establishes the list. And then we reach out to Bill Wallace. Bill agrees. And again, step number one is we go to National Grid first. They'll take them down for us. And then what they say they can't take down because they're not a threat, that's how we do the third party audits.
Right.
So, I mean, we're out there every day. If we become aware when we have notice, we'll get on the list and we'll get it down if it's an issue.
I'm just trying to think of anything that we could do proactively to,
I think an arborist truck, if we were to go that route, and that's going to require, unfortunately, more staffing, we can at least get some of the dead limbs that we're not getting now. Those we typically don't farm out to third party, ones that Bill does, but the bigger trees, we'd still have to have an arborist company that has more expertise to do that type of work. But at least we can go in and just do general maintenance in the canopy that we're not doing now. So, I mean, I'd like to have more funding for the tree warden. We did level fund that for the upcoming fiscal year, but again, this particular year, we've already expended that budget. So we'll have to see what the rest of the year holds for us. Streetlights, that's overseen by my department. Just for the council's update, we opened a regional bid with Narragansett and North Kingston last Monday for LED streetlight conversion, and as a separate component of that was smart controllers. I guess that's what they're called. So we're evaluating those bids now. I think we got either 5 or 6 bids in, where we did a regional bid with Narragansett and Wesley a year ago, only got 1. So we've got some, I think, favorable pricing, so we hope to be back to the council. It's going to be a long process to try to go through a lot of technical issues on the lighting itself and the type of controllers. The other thing we're waiting on is we're waiting on an updated price from National Grid, because we have to purchase their streetlights before we move forward LED conversion. So we've asked for an updated price. So the last one we got from them was back in May of 2016. So that price back then was about $50. So we're still waiting for an updated. Hopefully that price is going to drop significantly since July of 16.
And when you say smart lighting, you're referring to like you can brighten them or dim them based on.
Correct. So in that term, that computer will probably sit in the dispatch area of the police departments. And I've talked to Chief Jaber about this. So if there's an accident, for example, in an intersection, they can increase the intensity of the light, and then they can tone it down after. And we can also, if we want, drop the intensity by, let's say, 30% from 2 o'clock in the morning to 5 in the morning. And the other nice feature is that if we do have evacuations from the South Shore area, you can actually pulse the lights like a rabbit, if you will, and you can pulse them right to the shelter. So I think it's, the technology's there. And the last general fund is the highway division. Again, we did hire, it was in the budget for this year, an equipment operator as of June was funded for half the year, so we've got the additional cost for next year. Highway division, they're responsible for, overall right-of-way maintenance, roadside mowing, pothole repair. In the professional services account, we also have pavement preservation, being stone sealing, road striping, and crack sealing, because those are short-term, unlike road overlays, which are long-term under the capital budget. Highway division, they also are responsible for some of the earthen dam maintenance that we do in town. Again, no significant increases other than the additional half funding for this new person that's going to be full-time for next year. That's the general fund in a nutshell.
That's it on the general funds.
John, again this year, sort of traffic calming has been an issue that we've heard numerous times from the public. Do you think it might be appropriate to have like a separate line item for traffic calming expenditures so that we...
Yeah, I think, this is my opinion on traffic calming. I think you got to be cautious in how you proceed with that, because if you do it, I mean, it's people come to the transportation committee from neighborhoods, and it's their own neighbors that are speeding. It's not, the general public. Although on some roads that are cut through, like Middlebridge, it's probably just not those individuals. But everybody wants it, so I think if you do it one place, you better be prepared that you're going to have to do it everywhere. And I think it's a society issue. It's every road in town, every town in the state, every state in the country. People driving is the last thing on their mind. And it's going to be, I think it's a difficult thing to try to address holistically in the town. I think the first step would be to, if the council so chooses, have some type of town-wide study done on what would be the best methods on how to implement traffic calming and what type of areas those are most appropriate. But, I didn't propose that in the budget for this year. I think that would be the first step before we start embarking on, feedback signs. The police department did purchase 2 new trailers, and I know they've been using those more effectively than we had with just one, so they've got 3 now.
We could always purchase those cameras that they got in Providence.
Oh, jeez.
I
Abel,
don't know if that would be too well received.
Abel, I do like that idea, though, that if we did have a separate line item that we could draw upon, for even the things that aren't enormous investments, like a speed monitoring sign or something, or if we needed more trailers, or I think that's a wise. It just seemed like an obvious thing we might be able to do. So it wouldn't every year become this. Oh well, we have to spend X amount of dollars for this one request. If we had like a small fund we could draw upon. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, maybe the Bike Ped Advisory Committee that we came up with can help manage a study like that.
And I think, to John's point, I think you're right. A comprehensive study needs to be done, because in some areas it's speed, in some areas it's volume, and those sort of problems need to be identified before you can fix them, but probably sooner than later, because we know we've got a couple of hot-button areas, but let's face it, South Road, Broad Rock, Rose Hill, they all have their different issues. You're right, you fix one and they'll all want it.
It's a slippery slope.
And again, I think, you look at Main Street. Main Street's got on-street parking. Middlebridge Road doesn't.
Right.
People do park on the side of the road, but not to the extent that Main Street does. So, Main Street's more dense than Middlebridge. Not that Middlebridge isn't dense, but it just, I think it needs to be looked holistically, and some criteria needs to be established based upon generally accepted transportation standards as to where where traffic calming is appropriate, and where it is appropriate, what types can be used that's effective. That's what I would suggest. And I haven't proposed that in my budget for this year.
Have we ever had a study of that magnitude done before?
Well, I mean, we had a DOT did a road safety assessment down in Middlebridge. They asked us for locations we said, well, no bridges.
Mhm.
We've been pretty vocal. We just walked Old Tower Hill Road today. The RIDOT, they're doing one from Monsignor Clark down at Patton Avenue. So, I mean, but those are specific.
Right, but never like a town-wide one.
It's not a town we've never done that I'm aware of, a comprehensive town-wide traffic calming study.
I'd be interested in seeing that happen. I think, in particular, statistics have been coming out nationwide about the number of fatalities that are being seen for pedestrians and cyclists, and they're skyrocketing. I think it's due to distracted driving mainly, but and I think we've seen it here. So, it'd be good to
Yeah. During that Winter Wonderland event that WVA had this year, someone was hit right before it started at the intersection on Main Street where the bike path crosses. And I was so nervous for the rest of the night because we had so many people out that I stood there and hit the crosswalk button like every minute so that it would stop cars from going down Main Street because, you know, people do.
Some people cross that without using the light, which I don't understand. I might as well address it. Probably a good point for Joe had the question about the solar project. So Kearsarge, I think they've got all the panels up at this point. They're doing the wiring and they're doing the transformer pads. At the last council meeting, the council authorized the whole petition on Rose Hill Road. So there was, I think, 7 trees that had to come out. Those have been taken down. And at this point, they're hoping still to be on the grid by the end of June. So what we'll do is that project, in addition to the off-site EP project, we've committed 100% of our town electrical accounts for South Kingston school and government buildings. And the consortium as a whole will be, for the Kearsarge project, we're getting 25% of the energy that's produced there. The off-site project's 22.5%. Capital cost of the project.
Do our fire departments, the UFD and Kingston, have a plan in place, like any kind of safety plan for an emergency for something like that at a solar field? I know it's a little bit of a unique approach.
So the projects that the planning board are approving, they have to provide an O&M plan that I sign off on, which includes emergency response before our project goes online. Kearsarge has to do that same.
Okay, good.
Joe, to put some numbers around that, we're anticipating that the in-town fields will generate $25,000 credit per month.
I mean, I don't have those numbers up.
Yeah, it's $24,000 or $25,000 per month credit to the town, and about $3,000 credit per month for the schools. That's $28,000 worth of credit coming back to the community as a result of that field. And then the off-site, I've actually got the numbers, John, I'm cheating. The off-site will be $6,000 to the town and $4,000 a month to the schools. So in total, that's, you know, it's a good chunk of change.
And do we still have the energy consultant sort of just on call?
CES is still on board. They're still working with us at this point.
Would they be able to, say, recommend like a simple RFP that something like the Rec Commission could put out just for?
So are you looking for solar there, or?
I would think solar on the roof, and you could even potentially do carport solar, so that's above the parking lot. They're pretty good systems at this point that are available.
It's typically driven all by, numbers.
Right.
What's the expense of the carports and that footprint, and, the interconnection costs that Kearsarge, I mean, they're up to, they carry, I believe it was $800,000 in interconnection costs. This is just for National Grid. They're up to about 1.3. They're eating the extra $500,000. So, I mean, so it's not just the capital cost for, let's say, the car ports. You've got, depends on where grid is, and with the interconnection cost, that's what's driving a lot of this. It's pretty expensive.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
And then also Matunic, I think elementary school, in one of their capital projects was replacing the roof, and there was a little bit of discussion around possibly doing solar there. And I wonder if, like you said, we could tap into them for like a simple RFP for something like that if the school department wanted to pursue it.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to put out the RFP, I figure, and see what people come back with.
Smith may have one.
Yeah.
Probably something similar.
Right.
Smaller
And John, one last question about the credits coming back to the community for the two solar fields. Those don't start immediately. We're not.
So the renewable energy credits are energy attributes. The developer keeps those for our Kearsarge project and for EDP for years 1 through 10. And then those will come back to us in year 11. And then the council at that point would have a policy decision. Do we keep the RECs and claim green? Or do we sell the RECs for revenue, or sell half of them and keep, it's going to be a policy decision in year 11.
But the point is, and it's an investment that's going to yield a return in the future. It can't be applied to next year's electric bills.
So that means that the project's going well, and we're concerned with, they've had a little bit of rutting on top of the cap, which was a concern, but they've seemed to have abated that. Now the weather's becoming more favorable. We've got our toes crossed to throw the lever, June 30th or thereabouts. And just one more thing on that is Kearsarge proposed, this is a little down the road, but they'll have a portal available. I think we're going to try to provide with the school department so that kids can see, what that site's producing every day. And on a blue sky day, it's going to be producing more power than on a gray, cloudy day.
Oh, cool.
So hopefully we'll get that out to the school department. That pretty much is it for general fund. Any other questions on general fund? Okay. We'll jump over to the water fund, and that starts on page 17-1. So the biggest expense we're looking at with the water fund is Suez filed for a rate increase. And I guess there's a little good news, bad news. The bad news is they filed for a rate increase. The good news is they're under from what we were originally told was we carried a 38% rate increase, and that has a profound impact on our water fund budgets because we currently purchase all our water from Suez for our Middlebridge and South Shore water systems. So, for example, for the 16-17 fiscal year, $206,000 of the $900,000 budget, or 23% was for purchased water. So that's going to have a more profound rate than, let's say, the water utility bill for this point. It's going to increase. So the good news is they filed, even though we carried 38%, they filed for 21.29%. So Mike Ursillo's already filed as an intervenor, which gives us formal status before the PUC. I believe Narragansett has filed as well. I don't know if Union Fire District has. And with Union Fire District, they have an impact because they have to pay a fire hydrant rental charge to Suez, just as Narragansett does for for the fire hydrants in Narragansett. We fortunately, with our South Shore system, we don't charge the fire district. It'd be like taxing ourselves. So we should be out next week for an RFP for accounting services with somebody who has an expertise in rate filings. We did this back in 2014 to review Suez's rate case to see if they have any, errors that or anything that we can question the validity of the information that makes up their 21.29% rate increase. So even though we carry 38%, the rate structure that we currently have in place, the user fee rate structure, is still sufficient at this point. We've got about, just for a little quick way of background, there's two water systems, Middlebridge and South Shore. Middlebridge is on the west side of Narrow River from the Middlebridge Bridge to Radial Drive. South Shore is essentially south of Route 1 from Charleston Town Line to Snug Harbor, that area, although we do service a small portion of Perryville. So we don't anticipate that many. We usually gain about 5 or 6 accounts a year, and South Shore Middlebridge has stayed pretty static for many years. So we don't envision for the upcoming year a big increase in the number of customers. But again, I think the Suez, what PUC finally determines is a reasonable increase, is going to have, at least not for this year, but it may start in future years to be more of an issue. So if the council recalls, you awarded a engineering services contract to CEI for our water consulting. So we met with them last week to prepare the water supply management plan update. So I've asked them as part of that and as part of the clean water infrastructure plan update to evaluate the cost of us building a filtration plant down at Factory Pond, trying to get those wells back online and coming off Suez. So they're going to be doing a thumbnail analysis as to what the capital and operating expense would be. Because at some point, Suez had, I think it was a 30-something% rate increase back in May of 14. Now they're going to follow up with probably somewhere around 20. So at some point, it's going to be probably cheaper for us to build, pay the debt service on a water filtration plant and operate than it is to continue buying water from Suez.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask, don't we maintain, is it like aquifers or something that we maintain so that, we don't necessarily need it to be online, but if we ever did, it's
So
available?
We exercise the wells every month, and we continue to have the wells tested by Department of Health, so they are still in Department of Health's eyes. We could light them off tomorrow. The only problem is we do have high iron levels in them. So that was a decision that we made back when we went on to Suez, or United Water at that point, to keep that as a viable source of supply. So again, as the rate increases continue for Suez, at some point we're going to hit that threshold where it is going to be cheaper to pay the debt service and operating costs and produce water at a cheaper rate than we can buy from Suez.
Do they produce enough water to meet the town's needs? When was the last time they were operating?
So I believe, was it Lucian, 2005? When did we go into Suez? 2005.
Okay.
So, and again, during the summertime, 1.1, I think that's the most I've ever seen. And it was like a 4th of July weekend where it was a Friday, 4th of July, and it was like in the 90s. So we pumped like 1.1 million gallons. But this time of year, we're, how much? 190.
Oh,
So we have that big a swing. It's a twofold issue. One is we get an influx of the seasonal residents, and then two, on top of that, we've got outside water consumption.
Gotcha.
I think there's a DEM grant program around water supply. I can't remember exactly. It might be about developing new water sources.
Water Resources Board, they had a program a number of years ago where they were going into South County, trying to find and protect. They actually did some, I think they did some exploratory drilling. I was on the Water Resources Board at the time to try to find viable new sources. I think they were more focused on like Richmond, Charleston, areas that didn't have, municipal water supply.
They are trying to spend that money. They have. I don't know if we can use it in some form or fashion.
Not that I'm aware of. It's not a case where we need to develop new sources of supply. We need to do treatment for the existing sources of supply.
I'd be really interested in pursuing something like that, because just the rate hikes that Suez has, and I'm just not particularly impressed with Suez altogether. And I know that people in town I've had people reach out to me and feel similar in that aspect.
The only downside I'm going to tell you is if we come off them, probably us and Narragansett. Narragansett has no source of supply. It's going to be a big revenue loss for them. So they actually didn't have a rate increase, I think, for about 10 years because it was this unanticipated revenue that they got with us taking water from them. So the downside is
Everybody else is going to have to.
if we come off, they're going to have to make up that revenue loss somewhere. So we're going to have to be a little bit careful. So that's water. Wastewater. We did add, similar to highway, the assistant wastewater superintendent recently retired. He actually was a master electrician. He did a lot of our electrical work. That was a big loss when he left. So we had in the budget for this year a master electrician for 6 months, and next year that's a fully funded position. So we have an increase of that for the upcoming year. And the bigger issue that we're dealing with is the pay-as-you-go for capital. I mean, the plant was built in '75. It's very complex. Some of those major components, many of them are in need of replacement just due to their age. We fortunately got the generators, the big generators, complete at this point, and we needed them for the storm. So we continue to see a large expense in pay-as-you-go for major components at the treatment plant. So we are proposing to increase the wastewater user fees from current minimums $255 for 10,000 cubic feet allowance per year, increasing that to $280. And then the excess charge would go from $340 per 100 cubic feet to $3.80 per 100 cubic feet for every 100 cubic feet in excess of 10,000 cubic feet. Septage resource recovery has increased their sludge disposal fees again. They went from $100 a ton to $120, so that's going to necessitate increasing the septage rate from $70 per 1,000 gallons to $78 per 1,000. One of the things we are looking at with our wastewater consultant is, the council may recall, we have what's called a filter press for dewatering for the sludge that goes to the landfill. We're looking at either putting a centrifusion or a screw press to get a drier take solids, and that would help us out on tipping at resource recovery, but also Synagro, who does our liquid incineration, they would consider incinerating if we could get our sludge to a drier content. So we may have some savings there, so the consulting engineer is doing that financial analysis to see what makes sense, either rehab in the existing belt press or go into a centrifuge or a screw press. And that's the major items for wastewater. So solid waste starts on, and again, I just quickly recap that all our wastewater expenditures are broken up by cost centers, so any funds that are expended at the treatment plant are apportioned to South Kingston, Narragansett, URI, because we all have flow to go to the treatment plant. Same happens with the sludge train. That's all apportioned to all three regional partners. Silver Lake Pump Station, Narragansett contributes to a flow to that, so it's a portion between South Kingston and URI. It's about a 65-35 split, 65% South Kingston. And then we have Kingston Pump Station, which the lion's share is URI. They pay the majority of that cost with Kingston. And then we have our local collection system, which South Kingston pays for ourselves. So it's all very detailed and proportioned on how the expenditures are made and who pays what percentage. There's no other questions on wastewater. We'll go to solid waste. I don't know how many people are transfer station users. I'm sorry?
There today.
Okay. So hopefully you've seen the improvements that were finally completed. So the former owner of Link sold Link to Patriot Disposal, and the new owner came in and says, we gave him the list, here's what was supposed to have been done. And it wasn't all the other owner's fault, because it was a long process trying to get the approvals in place. But once the approvals were there, it did kind of drag on. The new owner came in, he did everything he said he was going to do. So I think it's a bit of a change, the layout from where it was before, but I think once people are used to it, it's going to be a vast improvement. It looks, it's still a transfer station, but it looks a heck of a lot better than it did. So I'm very happy with the owner of Link now. He's doing a fantastic job. And we have them on board through June of 2020. So probably from a year from now, we're going to have to either decide if we can perhaps extend that contract or go back out. There's really a very limited number of companies that do that type of work, so we'll deal with that a year from now. Resource recovery for the current fiscal year, the $32 a ton municipal tip fee, which has been that way for 15 years, went up to $39.50 this year. It's going up $47 a ton next year, so the tag price is going to go from $2 to $2.10 a tag, which to me is still a deal. If you're down to one tag a month, compared to, I think private hauls are now at $30, $35 a month for curbside service. 39. Who's that? only one bag a week, Meg, that's hours, if you don't mind going to the transfer station. Wow, 39. This is, I think, the third year we're getting zero for recycling profit share. You know, the recycling market worldwide, commodities are just, they've just bottomed out. And I don't know, resource recovery doesn't see that changing anytime soon. And, you know, the other thing I wanted to mention was e-waste. I got a call from Resource Recovery last week, and now they're asking us if we have interest to put the e-waste pods back, which I said absolutely, but we want to make sure if we put them back that you're not going to change your mind 6 months from now. So I'll be giving everybody an update on that, but it looks like the e-waste pods will be coming back at some point in the future.
Going back to the recycling, do you know what our recycling rate is in town?
We're still in the high 30s at this point. We're still in excess of resource recovery's requirements. And that's just, I say, there's two different, there's overall diversion rates, which is, we take into account, you know, scrap metal, you know, C and D waste, you know, anything that isn't landfill, that's a much higher number. But the traditional, you know, blue-green bin,
Right.
you know, we're in the upper 30s.
And does that compare well to other municipalities?
Middletown, I think, we were always number one. The Middletown, I think, is ahead of us because they have a pay to throw curbside. Everybody in town, they have a town contract. So they're a couple percentage points ahead of us. Solid waste. Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
John, thank you.
Rob, is there anything else either one of you?
No, I mean, we can give you a foreshadowing of tomorrow night. What have we got on the calendar tonight? Public safety, public safety, emergency medical services, and the outside agencies will be here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry? Actually, it's a good question.
Yeah, we're done. We don't need, oh, go ahead.
Just real quickly, if there is snow and we need to cancel, is there a preference for a date, a makeup day? No matter what. We do have, yeah, so we'd really have to be looking at next Tuesday or Wednesday. And Wednesday we have school, so we really would be stuck with Tuesday. And Tuesday is the planning board, but we'd have to work around that if we need to.
Yeah.
Can we do ours first?
So I'm with Joe tomorrow.